There's two things that are for certain in photography. One is that, gear is super expensive, and the other is that cheap gear is usually not that great. Now with the RF lineup, there's a few wide angle lenses that are pretty cheap and also great quality. Like for example, the 16 mil, the 50 mil. But when it comes to telephoto photography, well, then you're looking at $2,000 to $10,000 usually to get a good high quality L series lens. That is where this comes in. This is the RF 1 to 400 mil lens, f5.6 to f8, and this little lens is about 900 bucks Canadian, which is really cheap for a telephoto. Now fully extended, this lens is not very big at all. If you've shot with some larger telephoto lenses, then you know how annoying it can be to carry around a huge heavy lens all day long. This is pretty much the complete opposite. For a 1 to 400, it's incredibly light. In fact, if you're used to shooting on like big heavy L series lenses, you probably won't even notice that you have this thing on. I think the best part about this lens is just how sharp it is. Even when fully extended to 400 mil, you still have plenty of room to crop in even after that, just because it's so sharp. It holds so much detail, and yeah, just look at some of these photos that I've managed to get with it. Most of these photos are at 400 mil, so they're all the way zoomed in, and you're not really losing any sharpness at all. I think the other thing that's great about this lens is it has image stabilization, which is great, because if you're trying to shoot something at 400 mil, you know that if one little shake and the whole image is ruined. So yeah, don't even get me started on shooting video at 400 mil. But anyways, the in-body stabilization does a great job. And if you have a camera body with in-body stabilization, then the two of them together are gonna do such a great job at just keeping your images and your footage steady. Now, this is an external zoom. I know that a lot of people don't like external zooms. To be honest, I've never had any issue with like lens creep or anything like that. And they do have a lock on it, so if you just want that extra peace of mind, you can always lock it while it's in your bag, and then there's no chance it's gonna open up on you. This has a 67 mil diameter, so pretty big. You're gonna need some fairly large filters for it, but again, nothing crazy, nothing compared to the L series. It has the zoom ring, and then it has a manual focus ring that you can use if you choose to shoot on manual focus. And then it also has this extra control ring, so you can actually program that to do whatever you want. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to the actual body of the lens. Now, when it comes to image quality, I'd say this lens far exceeds all of my expectations. I've even printed a lot of photos that I've taken with this lens, and they all look great. They're not soft or have a bunch of noise or anything like that. One thing I did notice though, because it's an f5.6 to f8, is that it doesn't do incredibly well in low light. The other day I was up at Lake Louise, and the sun had pretty much just set. It was getting pretty dark, and all the images that I took with it were very, very dark. Now, because I was using the R8, which is really good for low light, I didn't really get much issue with noise or anything like that, but it did look pretty dark. Now, this lens is absolutely a lens that you're probably gonna wanna use, when you have more light available, maybe the middle of the day, golden hour, stuff like that, just because there's so much more light available to the lens with its narrow aperture. But I was really surprised at how well it actually held up in low light. It was pretty much almost dark. It was well past blue hour. I would say this lens did an incredible job, far better than many other lenses that I've tried with a similar aperture. I think they've just done a great job with utilizing technology to make sure that this thing keeps up with some of their more expensive telephoto lenses. This lens pretty much covers all of my telephoto needs. There was never once a time when I was shooting with this I just thought, man, I just wish this lens was a little bit sharper. It just doesn't feel high enough quality. This lens, for what it is honestly pretty amazing. Because with a lens like this, there's really nothing holding you back. Your imagination is the limit, and there's nothing that you can't capture with this that you could capture with a $5,000 L series lens. Now, is the image quality gonna be better on that? Sure, but I think it's easy to get lazy as a photographer and just spend a bunch of money on super expensive gear and think it's gonna make a world of difference. But the reality is, with a lens like this, the only limitation is your own creativity.